These are notes on what I like to call atomic counting, or breaking down all the numbers you're going to see with regard to compounds and molecules. So there's two main categories of numbers I want you to know. The first one is called a subscript. It's a number that applies to the element or group of elements that come before the subscript. So sub meaning under, script meaning writing. So it's like the little numbers that are kind of down below. So a good example of that is H2O. And in H2O, 2 is the subscript. And based on the definition, that 2 applies to the H. It applies to the atom, the element that comes before it. So we can say that in this one, there are 2 hydrogen. There's no subscript after the O, and so in that case we say there's only 1. There's clearly not 0, or we wouldn't have anything written there. So we say here there are 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Another example of that, where we have a group of atoms, is in CaOH2. This is calcium hydroxide. In this case, you'll notice that the OH, the hydroxide, is in parentheses. And so, kind of like in math, the 2 then applies to everything that's within the parentheses. So, the 2 applies both to the hydrogen and to the oxygen. And so, here, this would be 1 calcium, 2 hydrogen, and 2 oxygen. Notice that the 2 does not apply to the calcium because it's not because the calcium is not within the parentheses. The second number that you need to be aware of is what's called a coefficient. So a coefficient is a number that tells you how many units of a compound or numbers of molecules you have. It's actually a typo. Let's switch that. That should say of molecules you have. Okay. And so a coefficient is really a number that tells you how many of something you have. If I say I have 2 cars, then the coefficient is the number 2. So if I say I have 2 molecules of sugar, the coefficient is the number 2. But then when you're counting the atoms, it applies to every atom in that compound or molecule. So for example, if I have 2 NaCl's, that means I have 2 units of salt. NaCl is table salt. I have 2 units of salt, and within that I have 2 Na's and 2 Cl's total. So when I do this, I like to think of it as I have, I have NaCl, and I have another NaCl. And so total I have 2 Na's here and here, and 2 Cl's here and here. This is not Na2Cl2. That would mean you have one compound that consists of 2 sodiums and 2 chlorines. That's different than having 2 sodium chlorides. As far as how many atoms you have, there's no difference, but as far as what you have, there is a difference. It's the difference between having a sandwich that, say, has 2 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of cheese, and you have 2 sandwiches, each with 2 pieces of bread and 2 pieces of cheese. That's different from having one sandwich with 4 pieces of bread and 4 pieces of cheese, for example. That would be a very awkward sandwich. So as far as counting the atoms, this example here and this example here, I don't know what's going on with my touchscreen, are the same, but as far as what it actually means, those two are very different. So keep in mind, I'm going to want you to know what it actually means. So if we put all this together, we have an example of 2CaOH2. So go ahead and pause the video and break this down into what it actually means. So you should have gotten that altogether you have 2 calciums, 4 oxygens, and 4 hydrogens. One of the ways I like to break this down, let me erase this, or not. Okay, just leave that there. There, we can undo it like that. One of the ways I like to break this down is I'll say, so I have 2 CaOHs. Each CaOH has, or OH2, has CaOH with 2 OH groups. So that would be 1 unit right there. But then I have 2 units, so I have another one, CaOH and OH. And this can get a little cumbersome, but it really helps you to visualize what you have without getting stuck on all the numbers. So go ahead and decide which level of atomic count you want. Certainly feel free to post any questions on YouTube, and then bring that worksheet to class with you on Wednesday.